So my name is Amy Marks, and I'll tell you a little bit about me in a moment or two, but more about insights from AU and beyond. And I brought some really cool special guests with me today. So again, I've brought actually David Flynn from KOPE.ai and Aaron Rutledge, Method Building Systems, who you can see on camera. Hopefully David Flynn will join us on camera as well. And after me will actually be Karen Novak and then Steve Rudge again, both from Autodesk and Symetri. So yeah, here's my group. We decided to make it a lot more exciting than just talking about AU. We're bringing AU to you with some of the best speakers that I got to see at AU. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Amy Marks. I'm the Executive Vice President of Global Strategy at Symetri. Previously at Autodesk as the Vice President of Industrialized Construction, and after that, the Vice President of Enterprise Transformation Practice. Hopefully you know me from the Advancing Prefabrication show or the Queen of Prefab series, but most people like to call me the Queen of Prefab. And so we'll be talking a little bit about prefab today, but we'll be talking about a lot more than prefabrication and industrialized construction. So we're going to talk today about not just industrialized construction, but hopefully most of you have heard about manufacturing informed design. And what I was really struck by at Autodesk University before we get to our guests is just the whole notion of data exchange. Not just that it's all about the data, but that it's about exchanging data from lots of different forms. So whether it was, I think, last year when I think Andrew Anagnost mentioned a competitor's name on main stage, it was almost like there was a gasp in the audience. And this year, every competitor and every ecosystem partner was named in every presentation and talking more about how the platform will enable both competitors and partners of lots of different data, of lots of different sources. So I think that is, for me, that was a sort of a nod to the fact that this truly is going to be the Autodesk platform as we know about open platforms. I always like to say that Apple is a platform that I use, but on it lives Apple Maps, Waze, and Google Maps. The end user gets to pick whatever they want, what works best for their lives. So I thought that was really important. And in our world of construction and industrialized construction, we have so many people doing data sources from different places like Tekla or SolidWorks or Inventor or Revit, from lots of different places because we're traditionally been about not just structure, but the services of mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and all kind of even the finishes. That it was, for me, it was a good indication that this platform is really coming into its own. And so we're going to have more of a conversation. But before we do, I just want to make sure, I like to think of industrialized construction. I know out in the UK, a lot of people say modern methods of construction. I feel like when I say the word modern, it feels old the second it comes out of my mouth. So I like to say industrialized construction, which is the application of manufacturing techniques and principles in the built environment. I think Autodesk, has really looked at the mission for industrialized construction to deliver new connected solutions for the built environment, but so that we can achieve outcomes of industrialized construction. But really, it's not for a lot of things you guys always hear on lots of the webinars. For me, and I think for many of those who practice industrialized construction, it's about attaining certainty. It's about getting more productive, as you saw the productivity charts from earlier today. But also it's about achieving sustainability goals. When 30 to 40% of what's in our landfills is construction waste, productization and creating products and manufacturing informed design is probably the single most important thing you can do to fight assumption-based design with, that digital waste that ends in physical waste. So yeah, I think Aaron, like you and I are going to start talking, and as well as David, about a concept years ago that really I started talking about called manufacturing informed design. Everyone says design make all the time, but for previous years at some of the, conferences, there was a lot about the design, not so much about the make in the AEC world. And I think in order for us to really achieve those goals, we have to find ways to deliver accurate manufacturing information in the, from the owner perspective and through concepts and into design. So with that, I'll let Aaron introduce himself, and Dave Flynn, you can introduce yourself at the same time because we plan on having a fluid conversation. So let's start with Aaron.
Hi, thanks. So it's so nice to join you all. Thanks so much. So I'm Aaron Rutledge. I'm CEO of Method Building Systems. Method Building Systems is a metal fabrication company. We're based out of Colorado in the U.S. And we focus primarily on the construction of stair and balcony systems. And I think we've got a somewhat unique approach to our to product delivery. We use Autodesk Inventor really as the backbone of our operations, and have built a lot of sort of bespoke software that helps automate inventor that allows us to quickly adapt our products to the unique structural and architectural requirements of each project. So we've got a lot of predefined solutions, especially for things like dress cores, but we can also adapt a unique architectural structural requirement for a project, and then use our software to help automate that design, and it streamlines our whole manufacturing process. I've kind of continually tried to move this approach upstream, so that allows eventually, hopefully, architects can then use those systems that we built to help drive our product design.
And by the way, Aaron, we didn't know each other right before AU. I didn't meet you until AU. I looked across all the classes. For those of you who think I only put guys on our podcast to think that we are friends with, I actually didn't know Aaron at all. And when I looked through all of the course guidelines and all the classes, I saw Aaron's, and I was really struck by the Inventor as a platform, because obviously manufacturing informed design is an incubation at Autodesk that I originally pitched, starts with Inventor. So we didn't know each other. It was one of the classes that I had to go to. It was like on my must-see list. I know, David, like you also mentioned it to me. Did you go to that class as well, David? And I'll let you introduce yourself before we go back to Aaron.
Hey, Amy. I did not attend that class because I was locked in our booth. I wasn't allowed away from that booth for 3 days. So I missed Aaron's session. But yeah, I'm David, one of the founders at KOPE. Really simply, for anyone who doesn't know us, we are building a platform for industrialization, for offsite construction. We have a long history with Symetri and AdNode and Autodesk, and I've worked with many of you before. We'll get into some of the specifics of that later on, but yeah. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, David. By the way, I had to introduce you as well, because I know we want you to jump in and we want to have conversations.
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
Yeah, like I always say, there's no one ring to rule them all, right? Like Revit was never intended to be mechanical CAD. So, we have to really start talking about this differently. So I'll pass it back to Aaron. So I went to Aaron's class, and I'll let you talk a little bit about your class, Aaron, and why it was so interesting.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So, this platform that we designed for automating our software, kind of one of the themes of my class was I made a lot of bad mistakes previously in another company. My first experience with this industrialized construction related around the development of a product for building stair and elevator core, service cores in a factory. We built this system, CoreTech. Now it's marketed as the new core Volcraft Ready Core system that modularized the stair core and brought it out as kind of modules that stacked with all the connection material pre-installed and rebar and stairs. And one of the big challenges we had was, how do we adapt our product quickly to the unique structural and architectural requirements of each project. The box seemed pretty much the same on every project, but they're vastly different. Each box we built was very different. The doors were in a different location, the floor-to-floor heights were different, the rebar and the structural requirements were different, the connection materials, which meant every single box was like completely unique. And we had to build a lot of software to figure out how to automate that. Well, first we just hired a steel detailer, and that quickly wasn't scalable. So then we built a system on top of SolidWorks with a lot of macros, and it was kind of it produced a perfect 3D model of what we're doing, but didn't have any of the production data we really needed to actually manufacture the thing. And then it was also very fragile because the code and the models were all sort of commingled. And as we developed and adapted our product, it was hard to go back and change the models and the code, and sort of a house of cards. And then eventually we built a kind of a system completely CAD-less. There's no CAD. It was a client-server database application using a lot of relational databases and tables that gave us all the production data and actually served our purposes quite well. But then we couldn't take that and integrate it with the AEC community. So that was sort of a eventual dead end. So when I started my new company, I wanted to build kind of a new platform that was informed from a lot of those bad mistakes that I'd made previously. Chose kind of an Autodesk Inventor sort of as the platform for that.
By the way, we've all made mistakes. I like to say, everyone has, what does Mike Tyson say? Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. We've all been punched in the face a few times in this. I've been here for a couple decades, few decades.
And I think it's really easy to fall into these traps. These software platforms just out of the box don't do what we're trying to do. I think Inventor is the perfect foundation for this, but in itself is really just a manufacturing platform. So there needs to be kind of a lot of wiring between it and what we're trying to do for the built environment, to build kind of an architecture on top of Inventor to do what we wanted to do. But in itself, it's like the absolute perfect platform for what we're doing. Manufacturing challenges were our biggest. So we needed something, that's parametric. We needed to build kind of a wide variety of product types. We needed something that we could automate, so it needed to have a very good SDK. It needed to integrate with the AEC community, so we needed IFC exports and Revit family, and we also, and primarily needed manufacturing data. I need to get DXF files. I need to get flat patterns for my sheet metal. I need to get bill of material data. So I really needed a platform that allowed us to do all of those things.
Yeah. By the way, Aaron, and you and I know, we talked about this a couple times last night. I was really struck by this slide in your deck, because it isn't just about one software out of the box. And industrialized construction is about convergence of, operations, designing things, making things, and actually fabricating and following. It's like sort of BIM to fab to field. And so, of course, there's not one product for it. And again, the elegance of this slide, that's the word I would actually use, shows that it's about really an overall systems architecture and picking the right things that are right for your company, your DNA, what you're doing, right? So I just love this slide that you had. I thought it was, and again, the exchange conversation about how to get files in and out, and the productization, the whole notion of this, it's a product, but it doesn't mean it has to look exactly the same. You can actually adjust it. We talked last night, Aaron, everyone loves to make that car analogy, cars are cars equal buildings. And I always said that the construction guys don't like that analogy. But in reality, a building is like thousands of cars, thousands of assemblies, things that we have to think about. It was too oversimplified, as people used to say, cars equal buildings. So this overall architecture, you need to really think about it and be purposeful, working with partners to think about how does it actually really work for me, all the way for the whole workflow, right?
Yeah, definitely. It needs to be, I think, adaptation of our products is a key part of the design of our products for the built environment. And it's really hard to, I think, with the approach we've used in the past, that everything can be kind of sort of commingled in one model. And I think it's important to have kind of well-defined interfaces between components. And that's something that I think we have a hard time doing in this industry. I took a break after core tech, and I went into software development, and there's a lot of lessons learned in kind of software architecture that I've taken to this approach, that how you actually build sort of a large system architecture like this, and it's not it's not simple. You actually have to kind of take a step back to look at how do you want to architect the system. It looks complicated when you look at the chart, but it's breaking down kind of complex problems into smaller ones. And it's built with the idea of having lots of individual modules that can be that can interface and can be updated and can talk to each other without having kind of a big house of cards again.
Yeah, I love it because, look, and Dave, I'm going to turn to you. We talked about, you can't do construction under a roof. That's not industrialized construction. That's not offsite. That's not prefab. That is after the fact sort of prefabrication, when somebody draws, I like to say, a dumb box, and we're trying to adjust and fit something into the dumb box. This, we want to eliminate somebody ever having to draw a dumb box and actually inform the design with pieces and parts. And I know that's near and dear to your heart, David, because obviously I went to design with certainty because I've known you guys a long time, and MID is obviously, I feel like it's part of my babies. But tell me about how you feel with, when you hear people talking about products instead of, construction process. What does it mean to you?
No, absolutely. It's a bit of a challenge. We're coming from a world of Revit, Inventor, Navis, the usual kind of ecosystem that a lot of us are involved in. And when we started to get into the world of off-site construction, prefabrication, productization, you realize that none of these tools are really suitable for the task. And exactly what Aaron's discussing here, you have to do an architecture on top of them to really get something that's a little bit consistent. So, we came at this from a slightly different angle, which was our background over the last 4 or 5 years has been helping Autodesk build Dynamo, building the generative design solution. A lot of our team are experienced in that space and have committed code to those tools. And so we were like, you know what? Actually, if you want to productize, you need pretty high level computation. Like those two things go hand in hand really, really well. And one of the main drivers for us in a really simple way was we live in a world of Revit families. We pretend that they're products. They're not products. They're just digital assets that you can push and pull and break and do whatever you want to. And the nature of a product is that you don't break it, that it acts in a very particular way. So what we have been trying to do is basically say, okay, well, what type of technology do you need on top of the current infrastructure to allow a product to go from the manufacturer, from the design team within that manufacturer space, all the way through to design and then all the way back. So making sure that data is consistent exactly this. So
yeah, I'm throwing up your slide because I really was struck by this slide. I think, listen, manufacturing informed design is a class of softwares, right? So like whether you're thinking about what Autodesk is incubating or something like Hypar or what KOPE is doing, I mean, there's a lot of, it's sort of like saying BIM and Revit is Autodesk's, BIM modeling tool. MID is a category of software, and what that ends up being named at Autodesk in their incubation, which was a great, what they're showing at Autodesk was amazing. So yeah, like it is about not just one piece of software to rule the world, but also like there needs to be an understanding of different stakeholders, right? Like if you find somebody, if Aaron makes this, how do you find him? How do you integrate him with other assemblies? I always like to think, yeah, it's great that Revit might have one button, but what happens when you want to search across 70 buttons? What do you do when like the data from one configurator doesn't match the other configurator? How do you do that? And I feel like you and I have talked about this a lot over the years, and I love this architecture you showed for KOPE.ai.
Yeah, I think like, what's really important to us on this architecture here is the two kind of green items on the left there. So the placement automation and product logic. The thing is that if you can figure out the logic of a system, a product that you're building early offsite, you're able to also apply it to the project. So you're able to actually place it in its placement. You understand the way that a certain floor plank might work or a wall panel might work. You understand it within its system, and you're able to bring all them together. But I think the difficulty that we've had has been that from the manufacturing point of view, they're used to a world where they kind of lose control of their products as it leaves that space. And when it comes back, they've already kind of got the infrastructure in-house to be able to say, oh, well, you've broken this, but I'm going to fix it for you. That mechanism is already there. It's inefficient. It's poorly put together, but it is what it is. And I think one of the hurdles that we've had has been to say to the manufacturers, look, there's a different way of doing this. There's a way for you to say that what you make will always be there all the way through the design process and all the way back, and having to kind of explain that. So, we've talked at length about the kind of market side of this thing, which, from a point of view is really about the idea of being a bit of a hub, being a digital space where you can put up a product without it necessarily needing to be some sort of a Revit family or even just a spreadsheet. It's all the data that's required for design. So what you're seeing there, Amy, is very much about supply and demand in a lot of ways around.
I mean, Building Connected, we just actually, Autodesk, while I was still there, we updated Building Connected so that there's the industrialized construction products, building types, and services. You can actually go and refresh your profile for free, those of you who are out there that don't know about that, in Building Connected. And always the notion, as David knows, like when we were talking about this, was always like, okay, great. So if I use the network of Building Connected to find out who makes it, the next words out of my mouth as an architect or a GC or an owner would be, okay, can you send me a model of that? Or how do I actually see it in representational form? And not just like you said, not in Revit form necessarily, but how do I get it in a form that can be manufacturing informed design? Like how do I make sure that I can still manufacture it, adjust it dynamically if I wanted to, again, depending on the adjacencies, how do I get that? And I think this really speaks to that. And I think what you're doing at KOPE really speaks to that, because again, like we all know, like Aaron said, your stairs, right, are never, you don't have like 50 different, you have different adjustments based on like what floor it is, what the loads have to be. It's not like you can make one stair and it fits everything, right, Aaron?
That's absolutely right. Yep, that's been the kind of the key challenge that needs to be addressed. And I love how this platform is kind of, I feel like it's kind of connecting a lot of things that we've done in the past with the front end, which has been a huge challenge. So I think it's really a brilliant, kind of presents an exciting future.
I mean, but for that, and there's other mini marketplaces that are everywhere, all over the place right now. Modularize is one of them. Configure in the US is another one that exists in some form. I think people are recognizing that you can't just go and sell with your mouth and your feet if you're doing industrialized construction, right? You have to be able to capture what you're doing in some sort of technology, and someone's got to be able to find it and consume it. So I think, David, like, you know, the whole notion of like these marketplaces, it gives, like, it's sort of like chicken and egg. If you didn't have a marketplace, why would you make products? Like, right? Like, so how do you kind of see that conversation going?
Well, you know, we're taking a slightly different approach to this, which I think has obviously made the technology build a little bit more complex, but I think the value proposition is higher because of it. As an example, if you are a product manufacturer, let's say, of a SIPS panel, you know, a structure inside panel, something relatively simple, but you go through a process of having to design it into the context, is exactly what Aaron said, every single time you get a new job. Every single time you got to test it, you got to understand how many panels you're placing, what the cost is, how many specials you have, all of that process. What KOPE is basically saying is we're going to give you that on the spot instantly because you've already given us your logic. So
Right.
What we really see the benefit here is to say, you know, the marketplace implies commerciality. It implies some sort of a financial exchange, but what we're really trying to exchange is the data. So we're basically saying this is a market for the product system information. It's sat on this website. It's available to you. You're able to run it in the context of your design and get some feedback directly. So we kind of we want to kind of go through that process first, Amy, in relation to making sure that the data is kind of king across those two pieces.
Right. Well, it has to be, because again, like, and that's one of the great things about Inventor, Aaron. Like, I love iLogic as part of Inventor, and I think also what they're doing at MIT with being able to do like no code, you know, programming of the rules around and constraints of the products. I will say from the Symetri perspective, one of the reasons I came here was for the Navigate MEP and Navigate Fabrication to Allied BIM offering, you know, because it's a two-way connection, especially when you know, we don't want these things to, after you've designed it and you want to actually fabricate it, you don't want that data to die at the machine. A lot of the BIM to fabrication stuff actually ends at the machine. You want to push it back up and actually feed it back into the Autodesk Construction Cloud, feed it into digital twins like my predecessor before we were talking was talking about. We need that data to come back around in the loop and actually, you know, get back into the marketplace to have improvements. So like, I'll give you guys, before we end, like one final thought about AU. What was the most impactful thing, you know, quickly that you each learned? Maybe starting with you, Aaron. Yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited about really all the MID stuff and what KOPE was doing. That stuff was, I really saw a lot of promise in the future of construction, and I was excited to see, you know, I think that sort of bridging that gap between the manufacturing and you know, front-end design side of construction. That I think was my biggest takeaway.
What about you, David?
Probably the openness from a lot of the senior, you know, innovation leads at some of these businesses to really take on some new products and to trust the smaller guys a little bit more, and to kind of get up in that space. So that was really reassuring.
I will say I'll put up my contact information if anybody wants to reach out to me on any social media at any time. I was also struck by that, David. I was struck by the fact that the smaller software companies were everywhere. Everyone was talking to them. And, you know, again, it's like there's an app for that. It's like every single thing that you could do. There was a small company there, people talking about it with big leaders from big companies getting, you know, heavy interest in all the little small companies with, again, you know, again, you need the Autodesk platform to run those things and to house them, if you will, to be the, you know, the operating system for those things. I was really struck by that the most, about the data centricity. And again, not just, by the way, 2 years ago, we did a study that, like, of all the construction guys, only less than 1% of them knew that Autodesk even sold manufacturing tools. Like, think about that. You hear a lot of people talking about the convergence of manufacturing and construction, but less than 1% of them actually even knew that you sold something called Inventor, or, you know, some PLM software, or, you know, FlexSim or ProdSmart, or all these things that are upchain that are there today. We've got to change that. I think you've got to understand what Autodesk has to offer the partners, as well as every one of these little software companies out there. That was what I took away from it the most. And then